Hi everyone and welcome along to the first watercolour tutorial of the new year. Now down here in the southwest of England we did not get a white Christmas, but we did get the most beautiful heavy frost. So I am going to paint a frosty watercolour leaf. So grab your paints and let's get started. Right then, let's get on with a bit of leaf painting. So all I need the pencil for is to just do a central line on the page for our leaf centre, and then I'm going to mix up a colour using my Cadmium Red, my burnt Sienna and Prussian Blue, because the leaf I'm going to paint was once an autumn leaf, so it was a lovely rust colour, and now it has become covered in frost, but it's still lovely and brown. So I'm just going to mix these up over here. So we've got our burnt sienna and the cadmium red making a beautiful rust colour, but for me the secret ingredient is adding in the Prussian blue, and it just deepens everything down and makes it into a lovely sort of deep dark brown. Now you can mix up all sorts of autumn colours using the warm and cold colours in your palette. I think I might even add in a little bit of crimson. Okay, let's go then. So I've got a size 4 brush, and what I'm going to do to start off with is I'm going to paint a nice loose sectioned watercolour leaf. So the way I do this is I start with the tip of my brush, press it down and start to sort of curl it a little bit, and it creates a lovely veined rough edge, sort of serrated edge leaf. I've taught you a few ways of painting leaves, but this is a really fun one if you're just wanting to get quite a sort of defined veined leaf. And I do up one side and then I'm going to come down the other. Now some of you may find using the size 4 brush a little bit tricky to control. As you can already see, it is a bit challenging to sort of maintain the unpainted white lines, but don't worry too much about that. We want the sense of them, but we don't want to focus so hard on those white lines that we end up with a leaf that's got a huge expanse of white in the middle of it. And then we finish off with one just curling up and under. And then very quickly, I'm just going to add a bit more Prussian blue to that, and I'm going to add in a bit of Prussian blue into the centre of this leaf. Some of the lines have already started to dry, but most have got enough wetness that we've suddenly got a lovely bit of depth and darkness going on with our leaf. So the next step is we have to wait for this to dry, and then we're going to do a clever little trick to get those white lines looking a little less stark. The leaf is lovely and dry now, and what I'm really pleased with is already that sort of the blend of the blue has done all sorts of sort of irregular blends, and that's how I start to imagine an autumn leaf that's coming through winter and is sort of maybe starting to fall apart now. Okay, so the little trick that I was talking about before we cut was a clean wet brush, just sweeping over these white lines. There we go, and you can start to see that colour just gently blending. I'm not doing too many strokes, keep it minimal. This just helps keep this leaf cohesive. And also what you can do is do a little bit of sort of joining up the leaf. So we're not talking about flooding the page with water, we're just talking about a wet brush. Okay, really nice. Now, the frost. How are we going to create a white frost on top of a watercolour leaf like this? I've always talked about light colours needing to go on first and then building up layers to go darker and darker, because watercolour is translucent and isn't an opaque kind of paint. So we need something that's a bit thicker so that the white will actually show up on top of this leaf. Now you can get a white watercolour paint which is used to thicken and make more opaque, or you can use something like a gouache or an acrylic. Now I happen to have an acrylic paint with me in the studio today, so that's what I'm going to use. There's a link below in the episode notes for where you can get it. And I'm just going to squeeze a bit of that into my palette, and I'm just going to use a clean large brush just to add a little bit of water to it and just get it mixing a little bit more smoothly, because it is thick and works in a slightly different way to watercolour. And what we're going to do is we're going to add dabs of this paint to our leaf. And I went out into our garden the other morning, and the frost was just incredible, and I took lots of photos. And what I noticed is you get a crispy outline, and then it will sort of travel up the leaf veins. So with my fairly opaque white acrylic, I'm just going to frost the edges of this leaf to start off with. So you want to get like a thin brush, and then get a little amount on the brush that you can sort of dab on, like so. And gradually we start at the tips and then we drag that paint, we blend it sort of down into the frosty tips. Now this is all very well, but we've got a white sort of frost edge on a white bit of paper here, so we need to be able to define those edges as well, and not just have these leaf edges just fade into nothing. So we'll also be adding a low light for the highlight, because that's really what makes any painting come to life. Not only adding shadow, which is one of my favourite things to do, but also adding the opposite. So I'm adding a highlight here, and so therefore we must also add a bit of shadow and a bit of low light. You'll see what I mean when I get through this frost. Okay, so I'm just going to get these leaves all frosted up nicely, and then we'll come back and add a bit of shadow. So we're nearly finished, and this is starting to look lovely and frosty, but just you wait until we add a little bit of Prussian Blue. So Prussian Blue is a blue that I like to use whenever I'm doing anything botanical, because it's got a slightly greeny tone to it. Whereas I like to use French ultramarine blue when I'm doing regular shadows and things. So Prussian Blue is just here. Just gonna get a little bit more concentrated in my palette. And now I am going to use it. I might just whack it a tiny bit of Mars Black in there, just so it's not too bright. I'm going to use it to just outline, for a start, So the tiniest dashes. We don't even need quite so much on the brush. So first, yeah, let's outline the Frosty leaf so it suddenly starts to show up on the page really nicely. And I'm doing this outline in a series of dashes, and I'm not going to do every single part of the outline, but you can see just with one brush full of paint I've managed to come all the way down the side. And then of course this is down low here, so I'm going to start to add in a tiny bit more of it as a sort of shadow. So I've still got barely any on my brush because we don't want to sort of overpower the white frost that we've painted in, but we just want, well, we want to highlight it really by adding little bits of darkness right next to it, you see. And of course you can always go back and add in more white afterwards. It's a continuing process. So let's just see, for example, a little bit of white now, and I think we'll have it just travelling down It's funny, I think a lot of people don't really think of watercolour for this kind of detailed work, and admittedly, although we do have a little bit of acrylic at play, we could have done this with a white watercolour paint. It's a shame you can't bring a frosty leaf in from outside and study from it, because that beautiful frost will thaw out quite quickly. But I went out and took lots of photos this morning, so it's almost like we're bejeweling the edges of this leaf. Okay, so I'm going to do the other side and then we'll come back for the last bits of detail. The last thing to do is to just add a little bit more detail down the middle, and of course a stem on the leaf. So I'm going to get my Prussian Blue back, and I am just going to place it in the palette with the Mars Black, and I am going to take that notion of adding lowlights where there are highlights one step further, and I am going to add a little line of that shadow in the leaf there. Clean off my larger brush. Just use it to smooth out a little bit. And you could do this before you add the frost. If you're adding lots of frost down the leaf, then I'd recommend doing this first, but I'm just doing it at the end because I can. Right, I'm just going to turn it round so I can do this side without getting my brush stuck. Lovely. When I'm coming in with this clean wet brush, it is not very wet at all. It's just got a little bit of dampness on it. And then last, we're just going to really draw that colour down. And what's rather nice is the wetness will just spread it. And then a bit of our original leaf colour, which has got quite a lot of added blue from a moment earlier on. I'm just going to squish that down. I missed that red. Let's get a bit of that red in. And there we go. One frosty leaf for a cold and bright frosty morning. Thanks for watching, I hope you enjoyed that one, and I want to say a big thank you to my patrons for all your support, because that support enables me to keep creating these videos that everyone can enjoy. And if you enjoyed it, then hit the like button and comment below to let me know how you're getting on. And of course, if you hit subscribe, then you're never going to miss another video. Okay, until next time, bye!